Oh boy.
No.
So looks like she went home for the day because she wasn't feeling well.
Okay.
So we'll proceed as is. We will have some food and drink arriving shortly.
Tequila shots?
Later in the day. Not yet.
That's good. Okay, then I'm leaving.
It's going to be quite simple. Each of the teams will present as if they were at a conference and you were a visitor coming by to say hi. Tell me about your poster. Short elevator pitch, 1 to 2 minutes, and after that, Q&A session.
Okay. So this is going to take what about?
Depends on how many questions you got. So,
okay. If I can get out by 7:15.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think we can make it. Yeah. So who wants to bite the bullet first?
Well, we'll apparently tell.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Here already.
All right. Shall I close the door?
Let's do this.
Yeah. And I'll stay as long as there's
Should we
food.
stand?
I'll stay as long as I have.
Cancel
Let me check
So,
on that
yeah,
real quick.
so I don't have it.
Have the food delivered at 9 o'clock. That's the way of keeping it.
As Brittany, how long is the presentation should be?
Your elevator speech is 1 minute to 2 minutes,
Okay.
and then your presentation is for however long you can keep the visitor engaged. So yeah, just introduce yourselves and do what you do best.
All right. Hi, my name is Jonathan.
My name's Manal,
I'm David.
and we're working on the metal ion infused hydrogel bandage.
Okay, when you're doing a poster presentation, it doesn't go this way. Okay? People come up to you and talk with you. And you may practice from the beginning to the end, but in real life, they come and read, you try to engage them, they say, wait, let me finish reading. Then they start asking you questions from all over. Okay? So it's good to have a practice talk, but if somebody wants to jump in somewhere in between, don't get frazzled.
Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to just pick up from wherever the viewer is posing the question and continue from there. Including interruptions like this.
Yeah.
Okay, halfway, Ricardo shows up, haven't seen him in a long time. I just drop you guys and, hi Ricardo, good to see you, right?
Yeah, so I mean, again, you're not doing a PowerPoint presentation. You'll get an opportunity to do that, but in a poster presentation, it's not going to work out the same way. So.
Okay. Well,
Okay, so keep going.
so
Forgot where you left off?
no. Okay, so we're just trying to know how to phrase the elevator's pitch right from the get-go.
So the best way to do it is just in 1 minute tell me what's your poster about. That's your elevator pitch. You're gonna tell me what's the poster all about, or your project. Tell me what your project is about. That's your elevator pitch.
We're working on a silver infused.
You know where my loyalties lie.
I can tell.
Be flexible.
With the capitalist corporate world.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
So we're working on a silver ion and zinc ion infused hydrogel, and with the incorporation of chitosan and glycerin. So we're aimed to increase or better improve the quality of wound healing through the incorporation of the metal ions to, in a way, attract red blood cells to create this process called angiogenesis, which speeds up healing.
Okay, if I'm not in your field, you've already lost me. Big picture first. Where are we going? Are we going to Stockton or are we going to San Francisco?
Okay, so we're just.
Right? Then
Do you even understand what Dr. Gun is referring to?
Not really, no.
Okay, so you.
I think,
so the overall purpose.
Yeah.
What's the problem you're trying to solve?
so we're trying to develop and prototype an electrically charged bandage that will help speed up the rate of wound healing.
You haven't told me, you haven't answered my question. What's the problem you're trying to solve?
Okay, so the
So we're
Yes.
We're kind of focusing our research towards diabetic patients that develop foot ulcers. So our goal is to basically kind of help that healing process, because right now the pain and the healing time is kind of long. So we want to.
Okay, you still haven't answered my question. What is the problem you're trying to solve?
Okay.
What is the problem?
Diabetic patients wounds aren't healing fast enough, so we're trying to heal it, make
Okay.
it faster.
Okay.
You know, you start with the statement of the problem, right? Okay, you understand what the problem is
Yeah.
compared to what you guys were.
Yeah.
See, engineers want to start from the trenches and they say, you see, 1 and 1 is 2, and because 1 and 1 is 2, we can prove that 4 and 4 are 8,
Yeah.
and because 4 and 4 are 8, 17 and 32 add up to 175, right?
And we talked about this way back last
Yeah.
year when I said to you the first thing you need to do is identify your clinical need and why you're doing this, because if you can't do that, then there's no point on going forward on trying to fix a problem that may not be there. So that's where you should start. State the problem.
What's the problem they're trying to solve, and how are you going to solve it? Forget the super hydrogels, all the nitty-gritty stuff.
Okay.
But,
Alright, so from the beginning,
Yeah.
okay.
diabetic patients are getting their foot chopped off because their wounds aren't healing. So we're trying to address that problem by make the wound heal faster.
Or by developing a technology that will make the
Mm-hmm.
wound heal faster, right?
Yes.
I mean,
So
that's about 15 seconds.
thank you. So what we are trying to accomplish is to make a hydrogel that addresses that wound healing by speeding up the.
You understand what is unique about our approach.
Okay.
You differentiate yourself because there are people who are working on this, right?
Mhm.
So our hydrogel incorporates the use of metals in conjunction with the moist environment of the hydrogel. So basically how that will work is that the positive ions that are from the metal layer on our proposed hydrogel would basically attract the negative red blood cells toward the surface of the wound, and that would hopefully help speed up and clot the affected area.
Okay, for every 2 actual words, there is a.
Yeah.
You need
Well,
to
why
search. Sorry, go ahead. You
Well,
need to search and you need to search and destroy a.
Okay.
Why would you be attracting red blood cells though? Isn't it platelets that are more responsible for clotting?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I think you just misspoke.
Yeah.
I think our goal is to kind of get the platelets to come and clot the wound so that it can start the healing process. And with the metals that we've chosen, there is an electrically charged bandage that's been being researched currently. And with that, it's using, I think, zinc and silver on a metal sheet. So what we're trying to do differently is we're incorporating it into a hydrogel itself, as opposed to having the metal sheet come in contact with a hydrogel. So right now we haven't really gotten into any testing or anything, but that's the main goal of our project.
When you say metal ion infused, what do you mean?
Well, we have particles of metals that we're going to incorporate into this hydrogel.
Yeah, but are they ions?
They're nanoparticles.
Yeah.
So they, in a sense, no, but they should behave or something like that.
So you want me to invest $3 million in your company on that statement?
No.
No.
Good.
Yeah, just make sure if your title reflects what you're doing, it's okay. Because if you say metal ion infused, people might expect you to have metal ions.
And you know the difference between ions and your nanopart? You know the difference?
Yes.
Okay, so
I understand our.
So what?
Our title's misleading.
Well, it's wrong.
Yeah, it's or wrong. Yeah. So we will change our title.
Okay. So you're using nanoparticles embedded
Mhm.
on a hydrogel matrix, again, as opposed to ions dissolved on your matrix.
Okay, so overall, so what's the problem? What is your approach to the solution? Or what is novel about your approach to the solution? How are you going to do it? Right? And then you have to also test for efficacy and safety. So that needs to be part of it. And for poster, and Colarian and Ricardo may disagree, but in most cases, it's a work in progress that you're reporting on. So you don't necessarily need to have a conclusion, because a conclusion means you've concluded, right? And if you don't have, if you've not made enough progress to be able to come to a conclusion, then your conclusion is shaky, right? Because your conclusion has to tie up with your objective.
Yeah, and at the same time, and Dr. Guna may disagree with me on this, is
I never would.
you have an introduction and you have an abstract.
Yeah.
And I think that that's taking space from you know, your font could be bigger, or you could add more meat to, because you have two different things that may be competing with each other. So if you have an abstract.
See, the abstract for posters is what you deliver personally. And the introduction is from what your problem statement comes, right? So this is kind of very traditional, think of action-oriented, you know, so that's kind of the background, and then the objective. Now, what are we setting out to do? How are we setting out to do?
Well, I guess our objective would be to kind of create a new and innovative solution to what's already been there. As I stated, there is an electrically charged bandage there are some that are already on the market, but they only incorporate one metal, as opposed to how we are planning on incorporating two.
What's the advantage of adding two?
Well, from the research that we've done, is we saw that having the two different zinc and silver put together on a sheet, it causes for a very weak electrical stimulation, and that's what helps to kind of heal the process.
You're correct, but why?
That I'm not sure of.
There is this thing called the electromotive force. And if you look up the EMF series, silver is on the noble side, zinc is on the active side. So that it's something like the potential difference in electrical circuits, right? And then that's where the electrical circuitry comes from. Okay, keep going. I know you're not being very friendly, but
That's okay. And so with that, we kind of want to make it so that instead of having a sheet that you kind of have to bind the metals and then place it on top of a hydrogel, we want to incorporate it into one thing as a bandage, so that you can kind of just place it there and you don't have to really worry about anything. Another thing we were thinking of doing was incorporating copper, but we were told that copper is, a lot of people are allergic to copper, so we decided to take that out. And instead, what we're planning on doing is incorporating chitosan into the bandage to kind of increase the ductility of the bandage. And I think it also has some benefits to the healing process as well.
okay, you say some benefits, be ready to answer one benefit.
Antimicrobial.
Yeah, I think so.
Antimicrobial.
Chitosan?
Chitosan.
Antimicrobial?
Is it no?
You said-
Copper has antimicrobial.
Oh, copper. What was
Well,
the
your silver
Yes.
is antimicrobial, but not chitosan.
No, Kairos definitely not.
I think it was just.
In the picture.
What?
Yeah, well, like in the picture, with like the platelets, that's actually showing like the chitosan layer on the bandage. So I guess that would demonstrate like the benefits, if that's what you're asking.
No, we are just disagreeing with the statement that
Oh.
chitosan is antimicrobial.
Oh, okay.
But you can't just say the image shows the benefits. What are the benefits? You can't just say, oh, we have an image there and it
Yeah.
shows the chitosan and those are the benefits. You have to be able to articulate what the benefits are.
Alright, so where are we right now?
I went over.
Okay, I tell you what, we will promise not to interrupt. You want to start from the beginning again with the feedback?
Alright,
Okay, yeah.
before you guys start, short, simple. Okay? No big words, no ums, no nothings. Okay?
So, diabetic patients are not healing fast enough. They're causing ulcers. Their foot getting chopped off. So we are trying to tackle this problem by creating a hydrogel that speeds up healing in minor cuts or wounds, and hopefully mitigate the possibility of having their foot amputated. So
as of right now, what we're planning on what we have chosen to do is incorporate zinc and silver into a hydrogel bandage, and for that, it will potentially cause a electrical stimulation, which will help to heal the wound that we are planning on targeting. And
So as you can see from our test procedures, we started off doing several runs of developing our prototype for the bandage. But first we obtained the following materials with their respective amounts. And so, well, the procedure that we have here is just a generic procedure for a standard hydrogel. But we tried out using chitosan, alginate, glycerin, and then basically trying to find out like the best results for the bandage without it drying out after several days. We also tried freeze drying it and also putting our hydrogel into a standard fridge. So we did try like different ranges of temperature and seeing the results from that.
So far, we found that incorporating 10 grams of alginate to 10 milliliters of glycerin to 125 milliliters of water, DI water, produced the closest results that we were trying to look for. But we are trying to tinker with the ratios of the materials and see if we can make something that's more, how should I say it, closer to a hydrogel than what we have right now.
Yeah, so pretty much we want the hydrogel to maintain its moisture but not be like too dry where it'll be unusable after a few days.
And then for the future, if we were to be able to continue on with this project, we'd like to test on pigskin to see if the properties actually do work. I don't think we will have time to do it in this short amount of time. And another thing that we would like to do is, I forgot what the other thing was, I'm sorry. It's not on there. It was something that came to mind.
Tensile strength. Tensile strength.
Yes, tensile strength. We want to test the strength of the bandages.
And that's all we got for you. Questions, comments, concerns?
Do you guys want to take turns or all at once or?
All at once, go.
Let's go.
Why don't you guys grab a pen and paper?
In my pocket, sure, okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Did you guys practice this presentation? Okay, that comes straight.
Yeah.
What is a very good way and effective way, I think, for me, and I was first starting out doing talks and all that, is you stand in front of a mirror and you record yourself and you go through the presentation. Then you go back and you listen to the entire thing. You'll be surprised at how many things you pick up that should not be there. That's a very simple, easy way of cleaning up a lot of what we are telling you.
So what do you have listed on the results? I mean, I see some pictures, but it's what's below the pictures that you have bulletized?
Okay, so that's like the like notes of how our prototype came out to be. So as you can see, it's
Okay, so
so
when
oh, go ahead.
so when you say ductility is low, that to me doesn't really mean anything. I mean, unless you have some values and some references to something. I mean, low compared to what, and what are the values? And
Are those figures in order? Is that figure 5 and then figure 3 or?
Oh, that's a mistake on my part.
Because we originally had figure 5 up in the top right corner, and then just recently we deleted our old figure.
Yeah, so just be careful about that, because when you change things, you have to remember.
Okay.
I mean, personally, I think the poster is a little wordy. I'll suggest you, especially like in test procedures, look at what people use to show their methods on this particular procedure. Just do a Google search on your actual topic and just click the images section. And if it's like a hydrogel protocol or whatever, you see how they do it and just use the same kind of thing to convey, at least, because it seems like it almost looks like you're trying to convert a paper into a poster versus create a poster on its own. There are many, I think you guys have a very exciting topic, but you have some leaps in logic, it seems, because, for example, you're talking about amputation and then you're talking about a Band-Aid. Like, there's a gap there somewhere,
Yeah.
you know, like, it's,
I mean, we don't want to go
yeah,
to
and by
worst
the way,
comes to worst.
yeah, and by the way, just you're not even.
I understand it was a little too like.
You're not even doing that much. You gotta, your terms have to be a little bit more technical. You said chopping. Amputation is actually the correct term to
Right.
use. So
Just-
your term should be
I
a
understand I
little
was a little too
bit more
dramatic.
technical too, because I mean, you're not explaining this to the regular lay person. You're presenting this
Right.
to people who are experts or are working in the medical field or
and it's,
biomedical field.
it's okay to have dramatic things to convey your point, but you don't want the leap in logic to be dramatic,
Right.
right? So try to make sure, even if you're going to talk about amputation and you want to connect it to wounds, try to bridge that gap as you're talking so
Gotcha.
that people find your work more relevant.
You know, if you're dealing with diabetics, sores in the feet are very common, especially when the diabetes is advanced enough that the nerve endings have become numbed. People constantly hit their toes against objects and they don't even realize that. That's how the infection starts and ends up in an amputation. So to catch those sores early on and get them to heal as quickly as possible is actually important.
See, so that's what you're supposed to say.
Okay.
No, and the other thing is if you've been trying different formulations on the materials that you're looking, whether it's alginate or chitosan or a combination of alginate and chitosan and different different conditions, you know, your gelling conditions, your temperature, I would want to see a table or something where you have all the different things that you've tried and the measurements that you've made for all the different formulations that you've made. You know, I would want to see something like that. What have you actually tried? One of your bullets there says hydrogel shows capability of remaining moist for a long period of time. And again, that means nothing to me. What's a long time? Seconds, hours, minutes, weeks, months, days. You know, you gotta be more specific than that.
So a friendly amendment to what Ricardo said, and
Use numbers.
Jonathan, you were talking about this, but I call them a test matrix. Whatever, these are the parameters we tested at what different levels. That in a nutshell tells the reader, what range of parameters and variables you're looking at.
I can build off of that. Jonathan, you said, I think, a really important phrase. Towards the end of the talk, you said, what we're really trying to do is see, what we want is how well can this material absorb water and maintain hydration overall. And that was great, except for it came at the very end of the presentation. Right? Early on, when you talk about testing, you say, what we want to see is how well can our materials absorb water and maintain it for a while. And then you said, to do that, we did these tests and we measured these things. Right? Because early on, you're type saying, oh, our results show it. We look at our results. And as a reader, I had no idea what these results were supposed to be or what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you could say, hey, we did this. These are our tests. This is what we measured. And these are our conclusions based off of those measurements.
Yeah, you gotta watch for spelling errors. Also, I'm looking at your tables of materials, and you have a word there that glycerin, and I think you mean glycerin.
Yeah.
So you gotta watch for that. And then when you said zero flakes and you have 4 nanometer, are those units correct? 4 nanometers?
I believe so, yeah.
I think for the ones that we may have bought.
4 nanometers.
I know that the ones that we had bought were very small, so we were kind of hesitant to use them.
That seems awfully small to me. I don't think those units are. So double check your units, because that to me,
And in the other small, they'll all clump together.
yeah.
Agglomerate.
So double check that as well.
Another piece of advice is each material you mentioned, just do a quick Google search on it so you know what people generally associate it with. If you're working on chitosan and you don't know what people are associate chitosan with, the first thing that's going to come to their head is what they associate chitosan with. So if you say chitosan, some people are familiar with it, and they ask you, oh, is that biodegradable? And you're like, I don't know, or those kind of things. You just want to have like the broad scope, like, oh, silver, a lot of people use it as antibiotics, or zinc, a lot of people use it for sunscreen, whatever it is, that's going to come to people's minds when they think of those materials. You want to know as well.
Sure.
In this beginning, did we talk about the justification with acknowledgements?
No, go ahead.
It just needs to be left justified. Putting it center looks.
Yeah.
So your font size should be large enough for a normal reader, not a 20-year-old with fantastic eyesight. From, I'd say, 5 to 10 feet?
I'm not the biggest fan of references per se on posters, a lot of them, but the references you put, if you want them there, you want them to be a little useful. References 2 and 4, you just post the website or something, and you copy and paste that there, which doesn't tell the user anything if they're taking a look at it, right? Maybe you want to see how you have reference 3. That is more suitable, but is this?
Oh, I actually think
Oh, yeah,
that's the
maybe
link to the article. I just
Yeah, reference 4 is the PubMed link.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's not supposed to be.
yeah,
numbers,
there's a,
but
yeah,
something
that's
is-
something, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so you have two references.
yeah,
Technically, yeah.
Well, we have more, but I don't think we can fit them.
yeah, that's okay.
We're good, for now, at least.
I think they're getting tired of it. Why don't you shut up, you know?
No, it's good. We need to know what to
Yeah.
do to
We
be
can't make these mistakes.
better.
Right, and the other thing you have to remember is if you scroll to the top, it's top of your poster.
Just drag it by the screen, yeah.
Yeah, you have your advisor's name there, Dr. Guna Salvadori. You're technically representing him in a way, right? So if you go out there and people look at it, they've seen his name, they assume, oh, you're presenting work that Dr. Salvadori has approved, not just yourselves. So that's something to keep in mind so that when you go out there, you try to make sure things are as accurate as possible.
And following up on that, I don't know, do we need to acknowledge the advisor, or if the advisor's name is?
I don't know where they got that. Typically, most of the time, I just say it's okay for the advisor name to be part of the sentence, but some people put it like that.
I did not understand.
Okay, so the advisor's name being on the poster makes the advisor kind of like a co-author.
Right.
So do you also acknowledge?
Right.
So I'd be acknowledging myself, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we don't
Yeah.
need your name on.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Okay.
That's like putting your names in the acknowledgement, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys have, now, the other thing, keep in mind, and I think you guys got it fine, is normally we arrange things so that you start reading on the top left-hand side, down to the bottom right-hand side. So you go down the column, you go back up, come down, then you go back up and come down and you end. So your story should flow that way, okay?
Okay.
And if you feel like your future goals, it's really not a goal, you know, you're talking of future action items, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be very specific. A goal is something more nebulous to me. It's broader and vague. You are doing a presentation on work in progress. So you can say what are the next steps you're going to take. And then you could, I think, also have recommendations for future research for whoever may follow in your footsteps.
In addition to your results, if you want to put a penny or something there to kind of indicate what size
Yeah.
scale it is.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
a penny, a quarter, something like that. Then the viewer has a sense of how big is that thing actually.
Could I see the legends? I know we're running out of time. Could I see the legends on your pictures real quick? Cause I don't know what I'm looking at by just looking at the pictures. I don't know.
So, that's our prototype in the mold, and that's it outside after we put it in the freezer.
So what's the purpose of freeze drying? What was the purpose of putting it in the freezer?
To harden it,
Why?
because it didn't come out. It came out very runny, so we think it would have been better if we put it. It would help it stiffen up in the freezer.
But you couldn't possibly apply it in real life if it was stiff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I could see that it's
So-
fracturing too and starting.
Right. So that's why.
I think when when we did this, it was still with our alginate. We've slowly started incorporating chitosan,
Right.
and chitosan there's a research article one of our other team members had read it through, and in that it said that they freeze dried that specimen. So I think that's what we tried to apply. With
No, but okay.
So- Do you know what freeze drying is?
Yes.
Hmm?
Yes.
What is freeze drying?
Freezing at low temperatures, very low.
Negative.
Okay, freeze drying typically means drying a sample through sublimation. So
like LN2.
Hmm?
Like with LN2 or liquid nitrogen.
not, sometimes, but not necessarily. It's at a low enough temperature that it's still a solid, and then you're evaporating the water out just in a sublimation manner. It's not about you putting it inside the freezer.
Right.
So basically, if I wanted to freeze dry something that was in water, I would freeze it, then maybe apply a vacuum and keep it at a low enough temperature that the water is being converted directly from ice to its gaseous form. And that's freeze drying, and that allows the structure of whatever material you're working with to stay more or less the same in most cases than when you just dry it, right? So different things, for example, if you take butter and you melt it and you freeze it back again, it's not going to be the same because they're prepared under different conditions. So that freeze drying condition allows materials to maintain their solid structure a lot of the times. So just putting it in the freezer and drying it and taking it out would not be equivalent to freeze drying the sample.
You also, if you had your test matrix, you can link your figure 3 to a particular combination of conditions, right? Because Jonathan mentioned freeze drying.
Yeah, but I still don't understand what the purpose is. I mean, you went from something that you said was too runny to the total opposite end of the spectrum to something that you cannot use. So, I mean, I understand and I agree that you should play with your chitosan concentrations to make the hydrogel have the consistency that you want, but I don't understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish by what you're showing in figure 3.
Well, I guess we were confused though, or we were mixed up on putting the freezer and freeze drying. So that's
Yes. So like when we were prototyping, like during like the last few months, we were just testing out different ways we would think that the gel could be preserved. So like one time we just did like the regular freezer and then the fridge, and then one time we did freezer, and then after a few days we moved it to the fridge, and then another time we just put it here in the freeze dryer.
Yeah. Okay, a lot of times experimentalists will kind of try different things, but then when they present it, they make it appear as though it was a thoughtful experiment.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't go out in public and say, oh yeah, we were just shooting in the dark trying this. You know, you kind of put a framework around it. And then if there are a few gaps, that helps you identify what the gaps are. And to be able to say, yeah, we better try this and this as well. You realize we missed boiling water. What happens if we dunk it in boiling water, right? Not that I'm implying you guys do that.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things Ricardo's alluding to is I think after seeing figure 5, figure 3 is bad.
Yeah.
Right? If I saw figure 5 and I still don't know what it is, okay, but if you tell me figure 3 is a band-aid, I'll be like, whoa, right? Is that a band-aid? Right? So you want to think about that when you're putting it. And then I see 5 and 6 on this. How many images did you take?
We actually took a lot, and we took some like on Monday, but we haven't uploaded them yet.
So one thing you do, even if you can arrange your images, as Dr. Salvador was saying, people make their things look thoughtful. You could arrange those images in a manner that displays the results more effectively, right? You don't have to just put one representative image of that, one representative image of this. You could figure out how you want to depict it again, I always recommend a Google image search on whatever it is you're trying to show, and you see how other people do it.
So like you want like a timeline?
However you want to do it, it would be better than, if you put a timeline, it might be better than this. I don't know what you're thinking in your mind, but if I put T0, T1, T2, T3, T4, and I put the samples, even if they're exactly the same, I can depict that and say there's no significant change over this amount of time. Right? You wouldn't just, so you could play with the variables you have and make something.
We're short on time, so if you guys don't mind, we'll go to the next one. We'll take about 3 minutes for setup and just, giving everyone a little breather.
We are shooting in the dark, you call it a micro.
You counted it?
Yeah,
I think this was
under
10.